Donald Trump's soft underbelly has been exposed. Apparently, talk of being sent to prison is his real trigger. For a second straight day, the president is ranting about Nancy Pelosi, saying that she'd rather see him serve time in prison for his alleged crimes than be impeached. Today, the president is calling Pelosi disgusting and a disgrace with this mid-air tweet sent during his journey home from the UK. Quote, nervous Nancy Pelosi is a disgrace to herself and her family for having made such a disgusting statement, especially since I was with foreign leaders overseas. That tweet caps a two-part smear of the highest-ranking Democratic leader in our country. The first came in this interview with Fox News, taped in the cemetery where world leaders were gathered to commemorate the 75th anniversary of D-Day yesterday.
I think she's a disgrace. I actually don't think she's a talented person. I've tried to be nice to her because I would have liked to have gotten some deals done. She's incapable of doing deals. She's a nasty, vindictive, horrible person. Ask Nancy, why is her district drug needles all over the place? It's the most disgusting thing, what she's allowed to happen to her district, with needles, with drug addicts, with people living in the middle of the streets, with people living on the sidewalk. You can't go. She ought to focus on that because she's a disaster. And she made a statement. It was a horrible,
when you were
nasty,
overseas,
vicious statement while I'm overseas. Now, if I made any statement about anybody, it would be like a big head. Why would he do that when he's overseas? She didn't want to. She is a terrible person. And I'll tell you, her name, it's Nervous Nancy, because she's a nervous wreck.
When you're overseas, he's still overseas, saying those things. God. All right, so here's the original story that sent Trump into his now days-long tailspin. Pelosi, this is the reporting. Quote, I don't want to see him impeached. I want to see him in prison, Pelosi said. That's according to multiple Democratic sources familiar with the meeting. Instead of impeachment, Pelosi still prefers to see Trump defeated at the ballot box and then prosecuted for his alleged crimes. That's according to those sources. And in the category of you couldn't make it up if you tried, here's the voice inside Donald Trump's head on the topic of investigating political rivals.
Speaker Pelosi now apparently telling senior Democrats she'd like to see Trump behind bars. Based on no actual crime, she wants a political opponent locked up in prison. That happens in banana republics. Beyond despicable behavior. And by the way, they would literally turn, in many ways, the USA into a country we would no longer recognize.
Okay, so put a pin in that. It sure would, Sean. And just in case irony really is dead, we wanted to get on the record with this headline. Remember when the New York Times revealed that Donald Trump tried to ask the Justice Department to prosecute Jim Comey and Hillary Clinton? It was a move foreshadowed at his MAGA rallies where instead of singing Kumbaya like they do at normal campaigns, they chanted lock her up.
Tell you what, for what she's done, they should lock her up. She deleted the emails. She has to go to jail. I think Hillary is very weak. I think she's pathetic. I think she should be in jail for what she did with her emails.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah, because you'd be in jail.
So the moral of the whole story, for those of you following along at home, karma is a you-know-what. And that is where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Jason Johnson is the political editor for TheRoot.com. NBC and MSNBC national affairs analyst John Heilman is here. From MoveOn.org, Karine Jean-Pierre is back. And the Rev Al Sharpton, host of Politics Nation here on MSNBC and president of the National Action Network. We are also joined by former U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance and Frank Figliuzzi, former FBI director for counterintelligence. Frank, I'm going to start with you because as ludicrous as they are, as ridiculous as they sound for pointing fingers and accusing their political opponents of doing that which they have done, one of the most disturbing things the president did was ask his Justice Department and then Attorney General Jeff Sessions to investigate and prosecute in jail Jim Comey and Hillary Clinton. So the notion that Sean Hannity still has the capacity, and then maybe he's worth what they pay him, if he can say those things with a straight face, that it makes us a banana republic to talk about prosecuting our political rivals.
Well, and it gets even more recent than that. You'll recall, Nicole, that Attorney General Barr wouldn't even answer the question on the Hill as to whether or not anyone at the White House had asked him or talked to him about investigating opponents and others contrary to Trump. So it's still going on. And for Fox News to have someone saying that Pelosi's behavior smacks of a banana republic is to simply disregard reality. Here's the important distinction between what the president's been doing and chants of lock her up at rallies and targeting opponents versus what Pelosi said to a group of her members. Pelosi has an obligation, took an oath to uphold the Constitution and to address the conduct of a president that might constitute high crimes and misdemeanors. The Mueller report has laid out a strong case for obstruction of justice. So she just needs to all Speaker Pelosi is doing is saying, we've got criminal conduct laid out for us. Now we've got to figure out how to address it, whether it's impeachment or imprisonment. What the president is doing, like a banana republic dictator, is targeting his opponents without any evidence that they've committed a crime. And in fact, people like Hillary Clinton and Comey and McCabe have been looked at, are being looked at, and we have yet to have evidence to move forward with criminally.
Joyce Vance, it's a great point. Donald Trump is in the Southern District of New York an unindicted co-conspirator in an illegal hush money scheme. And in the Mueller report, Robert Mueller took to that podium now rather famously said, if I could say he did not commit crimes, I would have. Donald Trump is targeting people who simply have the audacity to run against him in a presidential campaign and refuse to drop the Mike Flynn matter, I think is what bothers him about Jim Comey. I mean, there is something deadly serious. And I guess with Trump, it's always so insane and it's wrapped in these conundrums, you know, slathered with riddles and then torqued by Sean Hannity's lunacy. But there's something deadly serious. And there really is an open question about what the Barr Justice Department will become.
I think it's a serious question, and you're right. There are miles of water between the accusations, the chance of lock 'em up that Trump and his supporters slung at Democrats, and this notion that the president, who's been the subject of an investigation that couldn't clear him, might really be at risk of going to jail. Those are two completely different things, but I think the Hannity quote really tells us something that perhaps he didn't mean to tell us, and that's that these challenges and the criticism of this president as taking us into banana republic territory and really tarnishing the Justice Department and opening up its processes to criticism, that criticism has hit them very close to home. They've seen how effective those charges have been against the Trump Justice Department, and this is perhaps their way of trying to sling them back. But, you know, Nicole, the facts still matter, or at least they should, and there's just no comparison between the president making political accusations and Nancy Pelosi talking about the results of a criminal investigation.
You know, the other open question, John Heilman, is whether Nancy Pelosi has struck the right balance. But clearly, by putting herself at a fork in the road and presenting one path as impeachment and the other as prison, she got under Donald Trump's skin again.
She did. I want to go back to my friend Sean. Is that
Please,
okay?
yeah.
So I haven't been on the show.
Go wherever you want to go.
I've been on the show a little while, so I want to warn everyone in the booth. I'm about to use some language that might need to be bleeped out. I think it's legal to say this.
Okay.
I yield to no one in my tendency to call bullshit on people at Fox News when they lie. And so, obviously, Sean's full of it, right? And we talk about the hypocrisy of what was on display with this thing last night. It's hypocritical. We talk about lunacy, I think was your phrase. It's lunatic. But it's not those things mostly. What it mostly is the relentless, disciplined, aggressive pursuit of a business model. The business model of Fox News is to create an alternative reality that is destroying the country. And in that alternative reality, Hillary Clinton's a criminal. She was a criminal from the day that Donald Trump said that thing on stage at the first debate, the second debate in 2016, and then on the convention, Republican convention. She's been a criminal then. She's a criminal now. They've created a world where there are tens of millions of people who think Hillary Clinton's a criminal. So Sean's not crazy. He gets what he's doing. That's his business model. And I think to be clear-eyed about it is to understand what they are doing. And it's part of why Nancy Pelosi faces the decisions that she has. I've been critical of her for how she's framed this impeachment debate, and I think she's not speaking clearly about it. I think she's undermining the House's institutional responsibilities to pursue an impeachment inquiry. But the political reality she's confronting is the political reality created by Sean Hannity and his business model built on lies, in fantasy and hypocrisy and bullshit. And that is what she's dealing with every day, is that there are tens of millions of people who not only haven't read the Mueller report, but don't think there's anything bad in the Mueller report about Donald Trump, and think Hillary Clinton to this day should be in jail. And until we get past that somehow, and I have no idea how to get past it, but until we get past it, it's going to be the political challenge that someone like Nancy Pelosi has to navigate on this question.
Well, you just turned this in a different direction and put away what I was going to talk about, and let's have this conversation, because part of the reason
I hope that's okay.
No, it's fine with me. You can talk to my producers later. But part of the reason Donald Trump won was because no one ever had a symmetrical debate with him. There is an asymmetry in this country, because the alternate reality is the reality in which Donald Trump thrives. It's where hand size matters. It's where not only do people think that Hillary Clinton committed crimes, which Jim Comey came out and said the opposite was true at the
Helping
end.
Donald Trump to win the election. Go on.
Investigation, but it's a reality where spying occurred, and we now have. So I guess the bottom line is, if this is a play and it's all bullshit, as you said, the play's in its second season, and they've actually recast the Attorney General. Sessions is out and Barr is in. I mean, it's getting more dire. And do you?
We have an Attorney General who has embraced the Fox News world of bullshit, is what's happened, and that's a hugely scary thing for the country.
Well, not only that, but I also think if we go back to where all of this sort of anger comes from, there's this difference in what Trump has done and how he's presented this, and also what Nancy Pelosi did. Bear in mind, what Nancy Pelosi said was behind closed doors. Yeah. It was a closed door conversation that she was having with staff that happened to link out. It's not something that she has run on. Look, I've been, I was just at the conference with the Rev in Atlanta yesterday. Maxine Waters comes out and says impeach 45, right? But she doesn't say throw him in jail. She says impeach 45, and I think he's a criminal. There is a big difference in sort of the tone and tenor and behavior of public officials who say, I think this person has committed an act and I think they should be held responsible, and this president who basically says, if I don't like you, I will call you names, I will threaten you with prison, I will threaten everybody in your family with prison, and I don't care if there's any justification for it.
But I think the other point that you're making is that you're making a point about the reality.
Well, yes.
And you're making a point about a distinction. And I actually disagree with you. I think Nancy Pelosi is fine to have things leak out about wanting to, because she's trying to appease a caucus that would like to see her proceed with impeachment a lot more aggressively than she has. But no one has an answer to the problem John Island's identified, which is that an alternate reality has been created. It's now in its second season, heading into another presidential campaign, and there are no. I mean, we're going to spend the rest of the day figuring out what to do with your bad word. I mean, there is no parallel to what the president says and does and what Fox News, how they cover it.
I think that's exactly right. Look, Fox News, not only are they divorced from reality and Donald Trump is divorced from reality, Fox News is just a dangerous political force. And let's be clear, they've been doing this for a very long time. They did it during Obama while Republicans on the Hill were obstructing him. The way that they went after him constantly, it was personal. It was really personal, not really about the policy, but it was a personal attack. And so what Donald Trump is doing is he does this all the time. He rises up people's negatives. He brings them to his level so that for him, it's a false choice, right? And that's the trick here. He did that in 2016. He's doing that with Nancy Pelosi. There's nothing new, but he's doing it with Nancy Pelosi because he fears Nancy Pelosi. She holds the key. She's the one that's going to decide if he's going to be impeached or not. And now he's hearing, she wants to throw him in jail. That enrages him. And she's a woman. Look, Nancy Pelosi did not become the first speaker ever in the House, and also the most powerful woman in politics, without understanding how to deal with an entitled man. And she knows how to deal with him, right? And this is where we are today. And so that's what you're seeing from him. I don't think he was scared of Hillary Clinton, but he's scared of Nancy Pelosi.
Rev, I want to know why he's more afraid of prison than impeachment.
Well, I think that there's several things that we must remember. One, anytime you bring up Pelosi, he is unraveled. because he can't deal with a smart woman. And we've talked about that. So he sees red when you mention Pelosi. He talking about he could cut a deal with her. He met with her 3 minutes 2 weeks ago and walked out.
Right.
So he wasn't trying to make a deal with her. And talking bad about people while he's overseas. He was up in the middle of the night tweeting about Bette Midler. Nobody knows what it's about.
Right.
This is about Nancy makes him unravel. But I think that what we are really looking at here goes to some of John's point. The model that they use is this kind of hyper-criminalizing of people, whether it be Hillary Clinton or the Central Park Five. This quote brings that model back to him. And it's almost like if you're a fighter and a guy uses your punch, because he knows how effective that can be. He knows if it catches on, he should be in jail. Because he's used that kind of model against people, he becomes part of the symbol of what he used to make the Clintons look like that. The last thing he needs is for people to start picking up in the street, hey, he should be in jail, not impeached, because he knows how he worked that kind of craziness in 2016. That's what's got you're giving him his own medicine, and that is what has him really going crazy.
Frank and Joyce, let me bring you back in and put the same question. I mean, impeachment seemed to be something that Trump experienced as a challenge that he would enjoy, you know, a fight, a joust. Prison's like this, like, cold shower. He's like, wait, what? Prison? What they catch me for? I mean, why do you think, Frank, and you go first on this, because we've talked about how you would profile someone like Trump. How would you profile a suspect who acts so out of his mind at just the specter of prison?
Well, first, there's a new I word, and it's not impeachment, it's imprisonment. This truly pressed a button with him. And why? I think he's looked at Manafort. I think he realizes Manafort's fate, and Manafort is essentially rotting in prison right now. And like you said, he could have dealt with impeachment as a positive. He could have played the victim. He does that very well. But now Pelosi's one-upped him and said, no, there's something far worse than that you can't play very well, and that's going to prison. And that got to him. The other thing is, I wonder if this now signals the start of Nancy Pelosi becoming a proxy, basically the embodiment of all things Democratic for him. So he's got 24 opponents for the race for president. That's a lot of people to single out and bully every day. And I think we're going to start seeing Pelosi becoming that single proxy and representative that he can lash out and tell the public this is the bad person that represents all these people.
Joyce, I want to just get on the record. You know, we're not talking about prison. Nancy Pelosi isn't talking about prison the way Donald Trump talks about prison. I just want to make this abundantly clear. I think that what has been reported, the body of public reporting, after the Cohen sentencing in December of 2018, it became clear that the Southern District of New York viewed Donald Trump as an unindicted co-conspirator in an illegal hush money scheme. There's been reporting that Donald Trump views, among the many reasons to run for re-election, the protection and insurance against potential indictment. After the Mueller report came out, there was an article in the New York Times that some of the ways in which the Mueller evidence was presented would preserve prerogatives for future prosecutions. When you talk about the possibility of a prosecution or an indictment for Donald Trump, it's because the reporting suggests that it is a real and viable concern among people close to Donald Trump. When Donald Trump chants lock her up about Hillary Clinton, it's for conduct that was never described as criminal by the U.S. Justice Department or FBI that investigated her.
It's an incredibly revealing moment where Trump really would have been much smarter to just let this pass. But he's now brought back into focus this notion that there are allegations out there of criminal conduct against him. The Southern District of New York presumably has facts that indicate that they could indict him. There are other investigations, some of the redacted investigations that could reach him. The Attorney General in New York is looking at conduct that the Trump Organization engaged in. And we know throughout this, there's this underlying threat of Bob Mueller, who refuses to exonerate the president from allegations that he obstructed justice. And we need to just stop for a minute and think about that. Serious allegations that the president of the United States, the man who's in charge of law enforcement, obstructed justice. And if that's not enough to send Trump into a tizzy, there is now a letter signed by over 1,000 former federal prosecutors, Republicans and Democrats, which is just to say career folks who looked at the law and looked at the evidence and concluded that Trump is at great risk of going to prison in the future. That scares him.
To address the topic that we actually were supposed to be here to talk about, which is Pelosi on this, I just will say this one thing. I think this is a really important week because obviously she wanted that quote to be out in public and she put it out there. And I think up until now you've had this thing where you had the Democratic candidates for president, most notably Elizabeth Warren, but others, most of the others, we're going to talk about Biden in a little bit, but most of them saying impeachment inquiry for sure, let's go, right? Clarity. On the House side, what you hear is mush mouth, like, well, he's convicted indictable offenses, but I don't know if we should impeachable offenses, but I don't know if we should do the impeachment. We should do an investigative thing, and maybe we'll impeach him. Blah 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 blah. They sound like idiots, right? She's now put forward a clear alternative framing. This is the first time anybody has said anything who's not on the impeachment bandwagon, who said something as clear as those who are on the impeachment bandwagon, which is to say, I don't want to impeach him. I want to put him in prison. That's really clear. And I think going back to what Rev said, I think Trump gets that. He gets the clarity of the message. So when Democrats sound like they're uncertain and ambiguous and all over the place, Trump looks at that and says they're a mess. But when he hears Pelosi say, now there's a impeachment message, that's really clear, and there's an anti-impeachment message that's equally clear and even more threatening. And so she hit the nail finally where she can present her position as, I don't want to impeach him, but let's put him in jail. Everybody goes, oh, I get that. I get that. Well, you can't. I'm not saying you can't. I'm not saying you can't do both, but I'm saying she's been looking for an answer for how do we hold off impeachment hearings. But this is a good answer for her if that's what she's trying to achieve. It's a better answer than she's come up with ever before.
But don't rush past this. It is in their fear world, the world of their fear. Because let's not forget, it was just a couple of weeks ago, Nancy Pelosi went to a ceremony at the White House and they said, did you bring the handcuffs? I mean, this is in their psyche because that is what they are afraid of. Right. And those of us from New York knows Donald Trump does know people that goes to jail and the ones around him now. This is no joke when you are somebody that that is a real present danger. I mean, who jokes to the attorney? Who jokes to the speaker, did you bring the handcuffs?
Yeah, well, I mean, and he could go on a tour. He could go, where's Michael Cohen? He could go to like 3 prisons and see old friends.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.